I think you've got the attention you wanted, and it's just like
exactly.
It's a bit silly. It's a bit immature.
It's pretty pathetic, to be honest, man. Yeah. I mean, you just more than anything else, you're embarrassing yourself.
That you guys do as well. That's really what it comes down.
I think it's sad that you think that because really, you probably care for dogs and cats and some animals, but the fact that you're just eating other animals, it's the way we're brought up and taught.
You see many vegans, all right, vegetarians, whatever you guys want to represent. Do you think it's fair that you guys go and invade farms? I'm not saying directly you, but the general connotation which is associated with this. So if we were should you not be talking about the other people who have given themselves a negative image? Because that is what it's...
But the way the media portrays it isn't what's happening. Like these industries aren't showing the public what's happening in those farms. So this footage is... Hold on, I'll let you speak. So this is the only reason that we're able to obtain this footage is because of people, whistleblowers, going onto farms and filming what's happening. They're only going onto farms to show what's happening. You're a consumer, don't you want to know what you're paying for? Why are they not showing you?
Look, mate.
But what do you think of that? They're not trespassing to harm anyone. They're trespassing to avoid harm to animals, to show you what's happening.
Which is fair. But you shouldn't be trespassing in the first place. Trespassing is someone's private property. For instance,
if it was humans, would you say Auschwitz was legal? If I broke onto Auschwitz, that would have been legal. Illegal.
Then you need to ask yourself if you went over to third world countries such as Indonesia and break into places like that where there is human slavery, human torture, everything like that. Is it the same thing?
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's the same thing?
For humans and animals, yes, if you want to compare the two.
It's the same
which gives you your answer that you're looking for, that would say, well, then why are you choosing blah, blah, blah. Well, what I'm trying to represent here is the fact of the negative connotation which has now come about, and you guys don't want to talk about it, is the people who have actually gone, and they are actually harming people's lives, harming farmers, doing that stuff, not physically, but emotionally, everything like that. So you have invaded someone's farm, and then there is many cases, many videos where you got... Sorry, not you guys. But you want to... How do you define it?
We want to share what's happening. The farms...
Yes, but why invade someone's...
Because they're not showing you where it's coming from, not showing me where it's coming from. So how else do we obtain the footage of what's happening to these animals unless they go onto the property and film it?
So then why would you not ask? Why would you purposely invade someone's place? Because that is trespassing. That is the definition of trespassing.
That's what, we try, right? We go through other means first. It's not like, a lot of the time there's been a lot of incidences of animal abuse and cruelty, and it's been investigated, and they go to the councils and they go to the police and they report them, but the actual law is in favour of the farmers. When we go to a lot of these places, the cops are trying to stop us from actually being able to film what's happening and show what's happening just on public property. And
no, we won't.
So what I'm saying is there is an interest.
What he said, because he said that you guys weren't associated with that, but then it's just come up with this.
Yeah, but I didn't trespass on anyone's property. I'm going on public roads, on public property, filming trucks when they go into slaughterhouses. Even they don't want you showing that to the public. You can't honestly think that the government's unbiased.
But then do you think it's fair to stop people doing their job? Because that's what you are doing. And it has been several cases where you are stopping the trucks and stuff, as you directly said.
Yep.
So is that a fair thing to hinder someone's job, hinder someone's livelihood for your own personal opinion?
But it's not a personal opinion. We know that there are billions of animals that are suffering, right? So we're not doing it for no reason. We're not here to antagonise people.
Doing it in the places where most of this occurs. You guys have filmed yourself. Not just that, but what you need to look at is where the most harm occurs, which is your livestock transports, which is all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we're against
you won't do it in you won't do it in third countries, third world countries. You only come to places.
We do. Activists go to third world countries.
The reason happens there, they end up in prison.
No. A lot of the third world countries, because it's more out in the open, they'll actually let activists go in and film what's happening in slaughterhouses and expose that footage. So a lot of slaughterhouse footage does sometimes come from, not this stuff, this is all Australia, but some of it comes from those countries because they're more open about it. They're not as open about it here.
Yes, but the question is, you said gas chambers. They don't use gas chambers.
Unless they're really Lindley Valley uses gas chambers.
Lindley Valley.
We've been out there.
30 minutes outside the city, they use gas chambers. That's RSPCA
approved.
CO2. Industry standard practice.
That's industry standard.
Yeah. But why? It's the same sort of principle. It's the principle of the matter is you choose to make your story, which is I'm fine with. But what I'm not fine with is the connotation of of which you go through. So he started off saying, you guys don't do any of that, you do your peaceful terror test, but now you've hinted that yes, we go along and we do look at
some are still different things. We're not all the same people. I mean,
I know.
we choose what we get involved in, right?
So do you think it's justified to force your thoughts on others by, as you say, going on public?
Well, let me ask you a question and I'll answer that. Are you against animal cruelty?
See, now you're coming back to that. And it's
The reason why I ask you, it's a fair question. It's a fair question.
I asked you, you can answer and then I'll answer. That's
The reason why I'm
fair.
asking you, okay, so ask me again. Do I think it's justified to go onto there and show the footage and push my beliefs onto people?
I wouldn't say, but no, I suppose it is beliefs. But okay, yes.
So
do you think it's justified to go into people's personal property and film and do all that?
I'll answer that. So I assume that you're against animal cruelty because 99% of people are, right? So the thing is that most people already believe what we believe. They just don't realise that they're paying for animal cruelty when they buy these products because they haven't seen what the industries actually do to animals. So they've been sold an idea of humane, ethical slaughter, okay, and they believe that all these things are happening that are looking after the animal. But the reality is that when you actually look at the footage and you see it, you realise that there is no humane way to take an animal's life that doesn't want to die. It's an oxymoron.
Well, there is true.
So you believe what I believe. It's just that I was sold the idea that there was a right way to do the wrong thing. Most people believe that, right?
Yeah, I'll have to agree with that.
Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So like what I'm saying is that our beliefs are probably no different. It's just that we have different ideas about things, I'm sure, but it's just that I recognise that when I pay for these products, I'm paying for something I'm morally against. You just might not know yet whether you're morally against it, because maybe, I don't know how much you've looked into these industries. But if you look at this footage and you go, I don't agree with that, and I don't agree with these practices, then that's the same thing. It's just that your actions of buying these products say different. So you can say you're against something, but when your actions say differently, then you're not living in alignment, right?
Correct, yes. I agree. I can't argue that.
And I appreciate you being reasonable, you know what I mean? So that's it. So we probably agree on a lot of things, it's just that your actions are different.
Yes, and it's my disagreement with your actions doing this sort of thing.
And that's fair enough. You're allowed to disagree with that, but I would just keep an open mind in the fact that...
And that's why I said, I'm only going to be here for another 30 seconds, and then I'll leave you here. Just to show my disapproval of the fact of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, but it's interesting that what he just said there, you just said that basically you agree with...
You agree?
Yes, I do agree.
So,
what I don't agree is with the action.
That's fine. You don't have to agree with that.
Is the key.
But let's put the action aside, though. You said the principles you agree with. So why would you still buy... Yeah, so why would you continue to buy animal products now that you know these kind of things? It's not... You go to the supermarket...
Let's give him some information.
Please grab one of our
There's
pamphlets.
other ones, but there's how-throughs, everything like that. This was
Take a leaflet. This is all of the alternatives that you can get in Coles and Woolies in Perth.
Check it out, man. We're not on opposite sides here, hey? Like...
We have nothing to gain. Like, I'm not getting paid to be here today. He's not getting paid to be here.
I understand that.
We have the agenda we have is to avoid pain and suffering.
I agree
to
with
sentient
your
beings.
principle.
Cool, awesome.
100%.
Awesome.
100%. What I don't agree with is actions. Because this was the same thing that was done. We saw it all on the news. We saw them walking down the streets and outside. That I can't agree with. Because that's...
I think you might agree with it differently once you realise the scale and the scope of what's happening. I think that it's probably easier. I remember feeling like when I saw this footage, I felt, hold on. I remember I felt angry at activists for showing me this stuff because I felt like it was imposing on, my space and my well-being. But the thing is that I'm paying for this. So what if I'm paying for something? Why should I feel that way about seeing it? If there's nothing wrong with it, then why feel bad about seeing or having it in the front of restaurants in the first place? There's nothing wrong with it.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I agree with your basic principle.
If I was showing carrots being grown, you wouldn't be coming out eating a carrot and go, oh, you do it. You would be different, right?
But it's the actions that I don't agree with.
Of showing what's happening? Or?
No, the actions of what you're doing here. Look, if you want to educate people, there is other ways around it. But doing it in a confronting way like this, doing a lot of protests which occur, and the negative connotation which is now surrounded vegetarian, all of that, I don't know what you want to define it as, that
activism,
area, it's the negative connotation which is now being brought upon by people doing the wrong thing. Why not do the right thing? Try and educate people.
So I agree with a lot of what you've said. I've said it. I agree with a lot of what you've said there. I think that the media has spun around what we've done in a negative way, and I think that's been
and media does. I have to agree.
If I read the news report of what happened and I see the footage of what the activists have done, you're talking two completely different stories. Extreme militant activists, storms on the farm, terror. I mean, even you can see through that stuff, I'm sure.
Yes, 100% agree.
So what I'm saying is a lot of the media portray us in that way because it creates like cliques and conflict and all that sort of stuff.
So why not do it a different way? know,
do
if
lots of
you're trying to
different
How
ways.
would
educate
you
people,
propose us
why-
to do that? What different way would you?
Well,
How do we obtain the footage
Is
if they're not
again,
handing it over?
you can do exactly what you're doing today, but you don't do it in a way that represents, the anonymous mask, everything like that. You do it in a more informative way where you talk to people one-on-one. Do it in a screen, put it in front of people, doing your markers, everything like that, because that's what this is all combined. And it's obviously that, yes, you guys started by saying you don't do any of that, but then, yes.
This particular group doesn't.
Yeah,
that's
this
right.
particular group.
That's right.
But then,
Can I ask you something?
Okay, no.
Can I ask you something? So you're saying you have an issue with us being confrontational in the way that we're showing what's happening, and your way of choosing to show your point of view is not through educating us and discussing with us, was to come and eat the corpse of
it's
dead
to do the
animals in
exact
front of
same
us
thing.
to confront us.
So do you think it's
so-
fair that you can do that and then I can't do this?
But the difference, I think, in this case is that we haven't confronted you. We've just stood here, whether you've purposefully walked over here. So I'm just pointing out to you that maybe the way that you're framing this of us being confrontational
Well,
isn't
it's the
quite.
exact same principle, is it not? You guys did
You've
it
walked
to
over
the
here
restaurant
freely.
over in Northbridge. You stood outside
I see what
the
you're saying.
restaurant.
I see what you're
So
saying.
that's the exact
You're-
same principle. You've done the exact same thing.
Yeah. The difference, I think, in that case is that. I think that the difference in that case is that the people in that particular organisation or company are paying for those products, right? So of course it's going to be a little bit of like a shock to them to see it. But if there's nothing wrong with that footage, then why do you have an issue with it being shown in the first
Because
place?
it's a confrontation. You
What's
don't like
confrontational? Just standing there showing the footage, or
invading people's restaurants, doing that sort of thing. That's people's livelihood.
I can understand why you
So
think going to a
why is-
restaurant would not be an
why is-
effective way of doing it, but
Why do you justify your way, but then when someone does the exact same thing, the exact same
I just
principle,
thought it was
it's not
funny.
done?
I just thought it was interesting
Yes,
that
it
you
was a
that
bit-
you were being like you were pointing something out, but then I realised you're doing that on purpose to try and make a point.
Yes, that's all I was doing.
Okay.
And as I said
I
to you
just
at the
don't know if
start,
it was the most
was only
effective
meant to
way
be here.
of-
All right, but there's no
Yeah.
other way to do it. Do you think there's another way to do it?
Yeah, that you could have just come and chat to us and had a chat about it. But I think the difference is that when I look at that, I see these animals and I see a lot of horrible suffering and trauma and stuff like that. So when you look at it, you probably don't see the same thing, I'm assuming. You don't think about the animals when you're eating it. So for you, it's just a
Actually,
piece
I
of
do a little
salami.
bit. It's the same,
Okay.
you had,
Do you
I
think
know
about
when
the
I first
animal,
walked
or-
past, you had the chickens, everything like that. I actually always get disturbed by the fact, an egg is basically a period from a chicken.
Yeah.
That's one that always does
Yeah.
my head over. That's a little bit gross,
Yeah,
if you
that's
actually
gross.
think about it.
Yeah, totally.
But, it's the confrontation side is what we need to come back to. So yes, I did what I did, but I did on the principle of the exact same as you. You guys didn't like it, so now it's gone back and it's come back.
Yeah, I
into
understand.
that.
And we don't want to go around in circles, but I think the interesting thing is this particular type of activism is just educating people and showing them what's happening. The types of activism you've brought up that you disagree with, we're not actually doing today. So I totally.
But you have said you didn't go along the public.
I've gone and filmed animals going into a slaughterhouse, and they've been stopped by the people that run the slaughterhouse. They work with us sometimes to do that, so it's not breaking any laws. They've allowed they've stopped the trucks before they go in. I filmed what's happening and showing it.
Yeah,
to
they have
people.
been doing that. I did see that on the news, and that's actually quite respectful.
Yeah.
They're doing what.
I would ask yourself, is what's legal moral? Because I think that if we substituted these animals for another being that you had maybe a closer affinity with, maybe it was just humans, you probably wouldn't be so concerned about us breaking the law to go and rescue them or take them off that property. Do you think there's a chance that it's actually just because it's animals?
Well, again, that comes from which country you're in. If
Culture doesn't define morality either,
yes,
right?
but
So,
you don't want to go over. You wouldn't be doing this over in, say, the Philippines. You wouldn't do this over in
People go to
Thailand.
Indonesia and do it for bonus time.
Yeah, we go around and do it.
Yes, but you won't do it into this. You
this
would
is all around
stand
the
in the middle
world.
of
This is 900 cities. Yeah.
So you would stand in the middle of the street and one of the populated.
Absolutely. They do it everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, it's all over the world.
And what happens when you do that?
Different reactions. Some people
Anyway,
are completely open.
sorry, we're
look,
going.
I think what I want to leave on is that you've clearly done something to get a reaction. You've gotten it, and we've had a discussion. But hopefully, you can walk away now and just have a little bit of a think about the fact that you might not agree with all the methods that we use. Not all activists agree about all the methods that we use, but the principle of what we're trying to share and say, hopefully, you can just see that there's
So
moral
I
and
agree.
just.
I'll say that.
Cool.
Say it to the camera.
We
Yeah.
agree.
I agree
Thank you
on the
very much.
principle.
All right.
I disagree
I hope you
on
live in
the-
alignment with that principle now that you agree with it.
No, I
And
always
please watch
agree with the
Dominion
principle.
Because
as well.
you clearly have the same principles, you're just not living in line with them yet.